Colorado, again. Jefferson County, again. School shootings spare nowhere in America, and yet it is here again. Investigators say a student at Evergreen High School shot 2 classmates today and then apparently shot himself. Likely no school district, no school community in our country is as prepared for what happened today, but there is no preparation for the heartbreak that's happened here again.
This is the scariest thing you could ever think that could happen. And these parents were really frightened, and so were the kids. And I know we always say not again, and here we are.
Evergreen is the latest American town where kids were not safe at school today. 2 students were shot at Evergreen High School around lunchtime. Investigators say the shooter was one of their male classmates who also ended up shot, presumably a self-inflicted gunshot wound. They say it's too early to know why the shooting happened and also too early to say if all of those students will survive. St. Anthony Hospital says 2 of the students are in critical condition, another has non-life-threatening injuries. They aren't saying which is the shooter and which is the victims. The shooting happened here around 12:30 in the afternoon. Investigators say the first officers got to the campus in 2 minutes, got to the shooter himself within 5 minutes, but they say by then it was over and they didn't have to fire a shot. The wave of calls that came in asking for help from inside that school instantly told them this was not a prank or a misunderstanding. This was a mass shooting in the making, and law enforcement began streaming up the hill here to Evergreen. Let's get to our Angeline McCall, who got an update from investigators less than an hour ago. And Angeline, certainly we know no information ever comes quickly enough if it is your community or your family, but we have learned a great deal about what happened within the last few hours.
Yeah, Kyle, in the midst of tragedy and chaos, the sheriff's office says that they've been trying to offer this information as it comes to be transparent and also offer what they can to families who are naturally devastated and just, shook today. Now, I want to turn our attention to what we know. We know that the shooter was a male student, as you mentioned, Kyle, and we know that there was a handgun involved. The shooting happened on school grounds. We know that it happened outside of the school as well as inside of the school, with 2 students shot as well as the shooter himself. There are still many questions surrounding exactly what happened, a little bit of a gray area, because the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office would not go so far as to say definitively that this student shot himself and that this was self-inflicted, but they would also not clarify any other situation for us either. They're hoping to maybe share more tomorrow. Now, want to turn our attention to the sheriff here, who had some really moving words, but also talked about just the importance, right, of being prepared in a situation like this, while also going in and making sure that they can also do things quickly.
We did determine that we have multiple scenes at the school. We have some scenes inside the school where some shootings occurred, and then outside the school as well. So several crime scenes to process and lots of people to interview. There were a lot of kids inside the school who saw it, heard it, witnessed something, so we'll be tied up with those interviews for some time.
We talk about kids being interviewed. Kyle, there are 900 students at this school. That's 900 kids who are impacted, 900 parents, 900 people that, law enforcement will also potentially have to sit down and talk to. Of course, there's a smaller group that saw something, heard something, witnessed something, personally impacted. And so our hearts really go out to them. Kyle?
Without question, Angeline McCall, thank you so much. I want to bring in our Evan Krugel, who has been watching investigators work throughout the afternoon. Evan, it's clear from what you've been able to see that they have been processing crime scenes both on school property and also directly off school property, where it seems like that might have been the location where the shooter eventually shot himself.
Yeah, we're still waiting to find that out, Kyle, but this is one of those scenes investigators were focusing heavily on this afternoon. This is what it looked like here on the northeast side of the school, just off school property around 3:30 this afternoon. We saw 12 or 13 evidence markers on the ground, with detectives placing small items into paper bags and at one point pulling out a white box with a handgun on it labeled evidence, picking up a black item, turning it over, and placing that item into that box. All things that are being processed at this scene off of school property, just a few hundred feet from the teacher's parking lot and the back entrance to this high school. Investigators then took shovels, picked up dirt, and covered the area that they had been processing in this driveway. A very quick scene that was processed here, one of multiple scenes they're looking at here tonight. Again, this scene much quieter now this evening. A steady rain now falling here on the northeast side of the school on a very emotional night for this neighborhood and this community. Kyle.
Yeah, and all the folks that we've run into up here just keep reiterating what a wonderful school this is, what a wonderful community this is, but as we know, no place is immune. Evan Krugel, thank you so much. Let's bring in Mark Salinger, who has spent the afternoon talking with parents who frantically, understandably, were hustling here to the school to try and see their children. And Mark, in this foothills town, there's only so many roads in and out, and with all the law enforcement coming up the hill quickly to help, things got clogged up here fast.
Yeah, very quickly. We are kind of at the base of where Evergreen High School is. The school is about a quarter mile or so up that road. And when news of the shooting started coming in, law enforcement from around the Denver metro area rushed to this scene where they began staging ambulances, staging SWAT teams, staging more people that could go in and help. But the people who were following behind them were the parents who had just received phone calls from their kids telling them there's a shooting happening at our high school. This is what's happening. Some parents got here without even knowing if their kids were okay yet. We spoke with one woman just waiting to reunite with her daughter.
My heart just sank, and I've lived in Evergreen 30 years and was in Colorado for Columbine and everything, and I just never ever thought it happened in Evergreen. She actually was homeschooled for a while, and I don't know, just fear of wanting to give her a good education and being scared of schools and stuff, and then this happens her senior year. It's tough, but she is okay, and I feel for the other families.
That woman's daughter called her from the parking lot as she was sitting in her car saying, the shooting has happened, I'm in my car, I'm safe, I'm okay. They later reunited at the Reunification Center, hoping to get that hug that they'd been waiting for so long, Kyle, as so many parents got that text or phone call today that they never want to receive.
And Mark, it was clear from just what we could see of the law enforcement response up here that when they got those calls streaming out from the school about a mass shooting, so many people raced up here, including ambulances, when they didn't know how many students they would need to transport away.
By the time we got here, which was probably an hour or so after the shooting, there were hundreds of law enforcement officers and cars outside of Evergreen High School. As we were driving up here on 6th Avenue and I-70, we saw two separate motorcades of sorts of ambulances shooting down the highway on their way to the hospital. Those ambulances were being led out by police cars with their lights and sirens on. Then when we got here about a couple of hours after we arrived, we saw several ambulances that had been staging behind me up at the high school. They left with no lights and no sirens on, obviously at that point knowing that there were no more victims, Kyle.
Well, and that a relief on a horrible day in this community, Mark, and as you well know from your decades of living in this community, Jefferson County Schools, I mean, has written the book for other school districts on how to prepare for a terrible situation like this, how to respond in a terrible situation like this, because of unwanted experience that this school community has had over the years. And if there's any solace today, it's that they were able to bring those plans to bear both inside and outside of that school building with an enormous and rapid response. Mark Salinger, thank you so much. The neighbors around this school realized quickly that something was happening. Many of them heard the gunshots, and then one of them, a retired teacher who lives not far away, heard a pounding at his door. It was a group of students from the cafeteria who had heard gunshots and had bolted away from the school. I spoke with Don Seigan earlier today, and he said that his instinct simply kicked in as a former educator, in that he began writing down the names of all of the kids that were there so that he could be accountable for all of the kids in his care, and he could then begin to tell their parents and school authorities that they were safe. And his wife, who happened to be a nurse, she worked to make sure that none of the kids were in a medically serious situation due to shock, to help keep them hydrated, keep them as calm as possible, and get them connected with their parents. Don downplayed what they did, said that, well, a lot of neighbors helped.
Really a scary situation. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we didn't know if this shooter had followed them out, and was going through the woods or down the street here and shooting. But, I think lots of my neighbors around here also did a wonderful job of giving shelter to any of these young men and young women. It's just a horrible thing to happen on this Wednesday today. And, we live up here in Evergreen. Evergreen's supposed to be this, beautiful kind of secluded area and peaceful and calm. And yeah, not today.
And then just like that, it was over, except for, of course, the emotional hurt and the pain in this community, and the recovery of the 2 students who were attacked at school today by one of their classmates. By the investigators' timeline, it was 7 minutes, start to finish, from when the first calls came in to when they arrived to when they saw that the shooter was no longer a threat to the community. Just like that, lives changed in an instant. When we return from Evergreen, our Jenny Meckles talking with parents at the Reunification Center about the worst day of their lives and the relief that followed. That's next.
I'm Jennifer Meckles reporting from Bergen Meadow Elementary, which was the site for reunification today for parents and students at Evergreen High School who were taken from one site where the crime scene was active here to meet up with their parents. And this is really a story of a 2-part story here at this particular reunification site. There is the systems and the processes of how this works, a system that Jefferson County has had a lot of time and practice doing. And then there's also this emotional story with the parents who had to come here and wait to see their child. So the systems and practices, right? We know this is how this works in these scenarios. The students were bused from the high school over here where their parents were told to come and wait, and they parked and they lined up and they waited for their kid to arrive, many of them texting with their kids, calling them on the phone, but they hadn't had an opportunity to actually touch them and see them. That was fairly, while chaotic, seamless. That worked as it was intended to work. But Kyle, there's also the emotional story of these parents today. As the sheriff said, there is no patience when you're a parent in this situation. A heartbreaking day for parents living out the worst day of their life.
I thought that was one of the most candid and real things that Sheriff Martinelli said today, that the idea of asking anybody for patience in a scenario like this is just out of the question for her. Jennifer Meckles, thank you so much for your reporting today. When we return from Evergreen, a look back at the sad and unwanted experience that our state has with situations like this, that perhaps, if anything, might serve as a roadmap forward. Next. No school shooting in international history has received as much attention and as much scrutiny over the years than the shooting at Columbine High School here in Jefferson County in 1999, more than 26 years ago. And the response to that shooting has informed the response to school shootings in the decades since. Our Chris Vanderveen has tallied 13 school shootings in Colorado since that time, Chris. It's a sad distinction for our state, but it leaves a lot of people here with expertise on how to best respond during those moments and help communities heal after.
Kyle, sadly, we have too much practice with this. 13, the latest happening today in Jefferson County, the same county that dealt with those murders in Columbine all those years ago. The list is long, no need to discuss each and every one of them, but it gives you an idea of the extent of the problem. Important to note, statistically speaking, kids are safer in schools than virtually anywhere else. But Colorado has a long history with this now, national epidemic. By my count, 6 killed, that includes 2 killed in a dorm in Colorado Springs last year, and Kendrick Castillo killed inside STEM school Highlands Ranch. I also have 21 injuries. That includes 2 deans shot inside East High School in 2023. That is a long list. Important to note, not all these are active shooters, and some of them happen just off campuses, but there are clear associations with the schools in those instances. KFF Health News did a recent analysis that found nationwide there have been more than 420 school shootings since Columbine, and that students of today are 10 times more likely to be a witness or in close proximity to a school shooting than they would have been in 1999. Kyle, this is a very long list. As you know, people here in Colorado have a long history of dealing with all of this, and sadly, there's a lot of practice with all this. Back to you.
It means one thing, Chris, for law enforcement, and obviously, you know, for parents like us. Your daughter has gone through the practices and the drills, and my daughter's just starting school, have just begun that process as well. And you know, that alone is something that a child should not deal with, let alone what happened today here at Evergreen with the tragedy that played out around noontime. Chris Vanderveen, thank you so much. The sad fact is that when this day is remembered in American history, the only note of what happened at Evergreen High School may be there was another shooting that day at a school in Colorado, because this was also the day that an icon of the conservative movement in America was assassinated at a speaking event. Charlie Kirk, the MAGA influencer, was killed today, shot as he was speaking at Utah Valley University. His trademark, the Turning Point USA tours, college campus to college campus, where he had fiery debates with liberals and be cheered by conservatives and MAGA supporters of President Trump. And he was doing that today, actually talking about mass shootings in America at the moment when he was shot and killed. Kirk was due to speak in Colorado tomorrow at Charis Bible College in Woodland Park. Andrew Womack is the faith leader there.
You know, it's terrible the day that we're living in.
Yes,
things like this happen.
It's a day and an hour, Andrew, where people can't debate without getting violent.
Yeah.
And Jesus said this will happen. In the last days, there will be perilous times.
Yeah. But let me just make this point that Charlie, of course, was a born-again believer, loved God, and I guarantee there's a special reward for those who are martyred for their faith, is what the Scripture says.
Charlie Kirk was also due to speak at Colorado State University coming up on the 18th. I'll return with a word about both of these shootings and America next. A famous man was shot in Utah today, a friend of the American president. School children were shot here in Colorado today, friends to their classmates at Evergreen High. Each of their lives had worth and value that no other person had a right to try and take. But all of them, all of us, live in a country where too many are sick with the delusion that somehow violence is going to solve our problems. Specifically, that picking up a gun and shooting somebody is going to solve our problems. A country where anger is not just accepted, but it is encouraged, where talk of vengeance and reprisals is now just openly seeping out of the dark corners of the internet and into the echoes of dark minds. It's a sickness that cannot be isolated, not to one kind of community, not to one kind of school, not to one type of political ideology. It is everywhere in this country. And this thinking that violence, that shooting someone is going to solve a problem, is a sickness that does not always claim the life of the afflicted. Too often, it's the life of someone else, which means that not any one of us, not a friend of the president or a friend to their classmates, is safe. Thank you for being with us. See you next time.